long day, I got a lot to say. It feels like I'm carrying a 2-ton weight. I go to see a friend.
Hello, I'm Monsignor Patrick Winslow.
And I am Father Matthew Kauth.
And we are speaking from the rooftop.
A podcast brought to you by 10 Books, in which we invite you to join our conversation out here in the open air,
where we look out upon the world around us from the rooftop of the church and share with you what we see.
Makes me wanna scream from the rooftop to the screen till I know
Hello, Monsignor Winslow.
Well, hello, Father Kauth.
I feel like we're a broken record.
Yeah, I know. Don't even begin with an apology for
We're not
being
gonna
so
do
delayed.
it.
We're working on it.
We're not really
this is
working
a
on
lot of self-help that's going to happen behind the scenes. We need to really do some me work. In this case, we work or us work.
I was okay with you work.
No. This is owned by both of us.
But we're not apologizing.
No.
They know who we are by now.
We are committed to working it out.
It is, and that is a good word, because it isn't for a lack of work.
No.
That's the problem.
True. That is true. Although, in fact, we're having this conversation because serendipity brought us together today. So, divine providence.
Yeah, we're working on
however you
something
may
else.
put it. So we figured we will at least offer one more. All right, enough with that. Do you want me to throw some thought out? I did have a thought earlier as I was listening to a talk from the Thomistic Institute, which is really just a fantastic program.
So support them.
Oh, I love them. So if anyone has the opportunity to listen to or go online and look at the Thomistic Institute and the work or the offerings that they present, it's just fantastic. They have a great series, a little video series on Introduction to St. Thomas, and then they have a series of lectures that correspond to those little videos so that you can go deeper and listen to the lectures on whatever the topic is.
You can get a certificate.
I didn't even know that.
Catechist, yep.
You're
on your way. Get your shingle.
I have really enjoyed their little short videos on these different theological topics of walking through the Summa, and their lectures that they record.
Aquinas 101. What's interesting about that is that Gregory Pine, wanted to call it simply Summa.
Oh, is that right?
And he was overridden, and it became Aquinas 101. The only problem with that is that doesn't translate into other English-speaking cultures.
Because they don't have a 101.
They don't have a 101. For us in America, it makes sense. It's the basic entry-level course. But in other cultures, that doesn't mean anything.
So what are they going to call it? Simply Summa?
They think it's 101. They've already called it that. Right? It's been 101 for a long time. So people are like, why is it 101? Aquinas 101.
Funny.
But they're fantastic. In the classic Dominican style, they had planned originally, Dominic Legge was talking about this, the current leader of the Thomistic Institute. They were going to have a Dominican standing in front of a bookcase giving the lectures.
As opposed to those little cartoon things.
Because that's what Dominicans do.
Right.
It's just classic.
Who got a hold
classic
of them
Dominican. And the donor that was giving them money said, wait a minute, I'm going to get you a producer. I'll pay more.
That's fantastic.
Make them interesting. Don't sit there in front of a bookcase.
Capture the attention.
Yeah.
Which, again, their words are fascinating and interesting and illustrative in so many ways.
But they're helpful to see with the diagrams.
But those videos are great. They're little cartoons that kind of bear out what the priest is saying the Dominican priest is saying in those videos. And they're succinct, and there's a little tiny quiz after the, anywhere between a 5-minute and a 10-minute video. Yeah. And then you do the quiz and you can move on.
Now let's be clear. The wisdom they're shelling out has nothing to do. It doesn't hold a candle to these half-hour episodes that we do.
Well, of course. I mean, they try.
It's a both and.
It's cute. No, it is. I truly, truly, truly enjoy it. And for me, the video is great and clarifying. It sets the table, but the real intellectual stimulus comes in listening to the lectures, because they've set the table so nicely and foundationally that when I listen to the lectures, and they usually have 2 or 3 that correspond to one of those little 10-minute videos, and the lectures are usually anywhere between, on the low end, about 40 minutes, to the higher end, over an hour, and to really just hear somebody think through, using St. Thomas, many questions or considerations, theologically and otherwise.
Yes.
And it's just so edifying. That said, so I was listening to one of them earlier this week. Typically I do so in the morning. And I started immediately thinking about the immutability of God. And from a philosophical point of view, I'm there. I get it. Perfection is perfection. There's only one way to go from there, and that's down. So we're not really becoming more perfect than perfect.
Sure.
And so I get that. On the other hand, I had to admit intellectually that there's a lot of mystery going on, because in the incarnation, I know St. Thomas has a lot to say about this, but it does seem hard to say that God, is unchangeable because he is a pure act. He's
sure
perfect. Sure. And on the other hand, to say he became man.
Oh boy.
I mean, come on. I get it, but I do feel that a lot of my acceptance of those statements, held in whatever appropriate tension they're held in, comes from an act of faith. I mean, do your best.
You didn't throw me a softball. You threw a 500-mile-per-hour pitch. I can't possibly hit it.
I'm just saying.
I was just up at Thomas Aquinas College and giving some talks to the faculty and students. And by the way, I think I might have mentioned it to you that they are listeners of the podcast, believe it or not.
Oh, that is amazing.
And the worst part about that was they were wondering about you a bit, because they said you have such dulcet, soothing tones. And I reminded them what my name was, because I'm sure that they confused the two of us. But nevertheless, believe it or not, this topic actually came up.
Oh, did it really?
On the immutability.
They're smart too.
Because they're very smart. TSC, Thomas Aquinas College. Those kids
amazing.
Are all, but they're steeped in Aristotle, and so they get this to some degree just from Aristotle. But how do you take a quote unquote unmoved mover? That is to say, someone who need not move, because movement is a change from potency to act. Like you have a capacity for something, and then now it's in act. And we're never like that as human beings. So we're talking about self-knowledge one night on the porch, and the difficulty that we have, of course, is that I exist through time, and I never possess myself in one act. I come into being from nothing. As I am, all kinds of new being accrues to me. So you and I have studied different things in our lives, and we had potency for those particular areas of study. Well, not a whole lot of potency, but we had some potency, right? And now we have them in act. So you're a canon lawyer, right? A moral theologian. I'm not a very good one. You're probably a better canon lawyer than I am a moral theologian. But nevertheless, there's a potency for it. But when I was 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, I had a potency for it, but it wasn't in act.
Right.
So there was a change there. Now, as I get older and more senile, I will forget a number of the things that I have learned. And so it's kind of back into potency. I don't know if this happens to you, but I pull off old notebooks from the shelf. And sometimes I look at them and it's so scary, because I will have a homily or a talk or something, and I think it's brand new to me.
Right.
I've just discovered something, and I find a notebook from 10 years ago, and it was exactly the same thing.
Isn't that amazing?
It's like, oh no, I guess
I forget far more than things I studied in the past.
Unbelievable.
I forget things I did yesterday.
Yeah.
It's a challenge. But,
so we're always
life is full of surprises.
We're always moving back and forth, right?
Yeah.
From potency to act. And then we're across time,
right?
And our bodies change at different rates, but the soul changes differently than the body changes relative to knowing and loving. So we live in a world of massive mutability. the only constant that we actually do experience is I am still me. I'm the same one that was conceived. What that is, I don't know, but it's still me. There's a continuity of just it being me, even though I'm changing all the time. So you take that reality and you try to have, quote unquote, some kind of relationship with God, who the scriptures say has no shadow of change. And for us, that seems static. It's the opposite of act, you know? It seems like it's just like a rock. It's just sitting there. It's done. It ain't moving again, which doesn't make any sense from our vantage point. So I asked that question once in a class many, many moons ago about how does God assume to himself a human nature
and not change?
And not change. How does the one person, the second person of the Blessed Trinity, assume to himself a human nature through which he acts in only one person? Because God, the Son, is a divine person. Jesus Christ is only one person, right? It's the Son. There's no two persons, nor is he a human person. He's always a divine person with two natures. And those natures, as we know from the Council of Chalcedon, are not confused. They're not separated because they're united in the one person, but they're not confused. They don't intermingle. And what does that mean? How does God assume to himself a human nature without being changed?
I'm waiting for the answer.
Because the change is only on our part, on the human nature's part. But getting any closer to that, of him acting,
it's a mystery.
Honestly, it's one of those things that you just bounce your head off. You can, as you say, I can understand that it must be this way.
Right.
But the convergence of him acting in time as a man, in a divine person, and the unchanging, like those 2 points meet above the ceiling of my reason somewhere.
Right.
And I hold them, and sometimes I feel like I can see them in faith, but I can do nothing in terms of description.
They're up there, kind of just like with arithmetic and other things that are above your normal reason.
Well, basic math is above my normal reason. Everything's up there.
I could not help myself.
The great cloud of unknowing.
I had to swing at that one. No, it's true. I mean, but the thing is, we're not unaccustomed to having truths that are seemingly in tension with one another,
that they're paradoxical,
but holding them to be so. And obviously, that's how there was no small amount of effort that went into carving out language to describe the Holy Trinity, to be, three persons, one nature, and working that out. I mean, that took an enormous amount of effort on behalf of figures in the life of the church and the magisterial authority of the church to weigh in over time to get to a proper articulation of the truth. It was too simple to choose one side or the other when the truth really lies with this sort of tension.
Yeah.
And this is one of those things. So it shouldn't be too dispiriting for the people listening to us. This is not an uncommon reality with our faith.
And it doesn't mean by that, therefore, we should just stop thinking about it.
No.
On the contrary, St. Thomas has a wonderful line where he says, the smallest amount of wisdom relative to the highest things is worth any amount of knowledge relative to lower things. So you gain so much by just trying to look at it. And sometimes, as I say, you feel like you've got it, and then you sort of don't. Because every mystery is, Robert Hugh Benson once said, it was a beautiful line, encapsulation of a mystery as an incomprehensible certitude. Like, it's certain. You're certain about it.
It's a self-esteeming paradox.
But it's incomprehensible. It's a mystery, which means God had to reveal it. He wouldn't have known it if he hadn't revealed it. I can reason to God's immutability. I cannot reason to his Trinity. And even his immutability would only be attained, a true knowledge of that would only be attained by very few, St. Thomas says, because it's hard to understand. It's hard to get there philosophically.
Sure.
But you can. And I was having an experience recently that I actually had the new class engage in prayer.
The new class of seminarians.
The new class of seminarians, yeah. And I wanted them to speak to God. This is going to sound rather strange perhaps, but I wanted them to think about in their meditation about God absent revelation. In other words,
Just know naturally.
just naturally. Like, I want you to go think, I don't want you to talk to him right now. I want you to afterwards. Like, but in terms of an actual meditation, I just want you to think about God being, like the fact that he is his own being. We talked about that a lot in class, in the beginning preparatory stuff for their studies of Introduction to Theology. And the reason I did is because I did it myself before I gave it to them as a topic. And I have, obviously I know that. I've memorized that. You know, the Thomas's sort of quote unquote only definition of God, ipsum esse pederse subsistens, which is being himself subsisting, which is just a gobbledygook until you kind of pull it apart. But being, to be itself and in himself subsisting. And I just sat with that because you can know that by reason. And I went so far with that in my mind until I probably fell asleep at some point. But
The image I have is, you know, when they say pull yourself up by your own bootstraps, like you can't reach down and pick your feet up off the floor.
yeah, exactly. Yeah,
Right?
yeah.
You can't.
You can't.
But metaphysically, that's essentially what's being said, which is providing the foundation of your own existence.
Yeah, exactly.
Right? It's what you're doing.
Exactly. That's a good way. Yeah.
Metaphysically, you're pulling yourself. I mean, God pulls himself up by his own bootstraps. It's like he is the metaphysical foundation of his own self.
And every other being, which is by
contingent.
definition contingent in that sense. And when you just sit with that for a long time, it changes a lot. It changes your perspective on what things are important, obviously, about your absolute rooted need in God's consistent activity to keep you in existence. It redounds to a certain level of awe, of wonder, of gratitude, but also just, I want to know what that being is like.
Right.
Like, I have experiences of all kinds of different beings.
But then that serves to whet the appetite, like to understand what it is better, what it is you thirst for.
Yeah.
But then when you have revelation, you do get answers to those questions. Right? You put a face to God.
Yeah. And that being out there that's just metaphysical is the one who said, get up and walk. You know, it's the one that blows your mind when you start putting those two things together. And maybe that's kind of part of the answer to our question, is that I hold these things about God, and yet in his incredible condescension to manifest himself to us, this is how God acts through a human nature. This is what God looks like, literally, through a human nature. And Christ himself, in his human nature, would move from potency to act. Like just as we do in time. It even says about him that he grew in wisdom and grace, right? Before God and men. What does that mean? I mean, it doesn't mean he got somehow better, but in some ways it does, because you actualize things in a human manner. You learn things from your mother at her knee. You learn things from your father in the shop, even though you know them with your divine mind.
But yet, God is immutable.
But he's immutable. And sitting in that, because if you only had the one, the sort of metaphysical, I mean, the thing about Aristotle is like, God didn't want having to do with us, in the sense that you can't be friends with him. And he's not the God that we believe in, even though that thing about him is true. If you don't have the other part of the revelation, like, it's so cold and sterile and even though when we had the revelation and then go back and look at just being, then it's fantastic.
Well, that's right.
Yeah.
You know, I was, I received a card from someone that had an image, and maybe it was Mother Mary Raphael, but it had an image of Sister Lucia's vision of the Holy Trinity. Do you remember the story where, so Sister Lucia, the surviving visionary Fatima, the two her younger cousins, passed obviously within a year.
Jacinta and Francisco.
And she was to stick around for a much longer time, and such that she died after the year 2000. And she was alive when her younger cousins were canonized, which is truly extraordinary. But that said, She had a vision in a convent in North Portugal. I think there was a Dorothean convent before she made her way to Coimbra as a Carmelite. And in that convent, there is an archway over a small entrance to a sanctuary in a small chapel in the convent where she lived. And she had a vision of what she said in the moment that made her understand in the moment the Trinity. I mean, talk about it, an extraordinary gift.
Sure,
right?
yeah.
Now, this is private revelation, but she's got some serious credibility on the issue, right? 70,000 people witnessed the sun spinning in the rain.
Yeah.
You know, come on. So I'm going to listen to her, understanding that this is not public revelation, but she's got some serious credibility in the realm of private revelation. So it's been the image that she described is painted, and it shows a classic image of the Father above, a dove, and then our Lord crucified.
Mm-hmm.
And I believe that the cross on which he's crucified is flowing water. And then dropping from the wounds on this flowing water cross in his hands is water and blood. I think it says mercy. I think it says mercy, if I remember correctly. I bring this up because although it takes a supernatural gift and not a picture to come to a moment of understanding of the Trinity. But this image, according to Sister Lucia, was used as a sign, a representation of value to help communicate through grace an understanding of the Trinity, which, by the way, I don't think retained with her. I think it was such that she has a memory of having in that moment an understanding. But when that moment of grace closed,
The understanding was gone.
she has a memory of understanding, but the understanding itself is gone.
Yeah. That's a frequent thing, whenever there's that kind of
Illumination.
airdrop, if you will, of illumination, since that which you're seeing exceeds the limits of a finite mind, by definition, when that power, that light is gone, you have literally no concept.
The lights are back off.
Yeah, because you didn't create the concept.
That's right. It's It's exactly the perfect way to say it. And so she had this experience, and she described the imagery, the apparitional imagery that was in front of her. And so this card that I received had it on there, and I had been thinking about it for on and off for years. Just this image that there has to be real power in this image, in this representation of the Trinity, and the whole notion of a cross of flowing water. It's just, I mean, I've seen the images of God the Father with white hair. I've seen the dove.
Right,
I mean, these are scriptural
kind of
images,
classic
really.
image.
And then
even the cross, and holding the cross, kind of thing,
and aligned such that they're in succession or procession.
Flowing water.
But the flowing water, that kind of...
Well, maybe this brings us back full circle, because what's important for us to get about his immutability is not that he's static, right?
Living water ever flowing.
What we mean by pure act, right? I mean, think about any act that you and I engage in, whether it's walking, running, singing, swimming, etc. Those are acts we're engaging in, and we feel alive when we're acting. Like it's us on a higher level than just being passive, right? And sitting or sleeping or whatever. We're active. We talk about that all the time, right? People being active in their lives, whatever. But if you're doing the thing that you do best and you're doing it at your highest capacity, you feel as if you're more alive than other times. Imagine that, exponentially, infinitely greater. You wouldn't arrive there because it's a different kind of being, but nevertheless, it's a closer approximation to what it is to be a pure act. So you're not static. You're not just not.
It's a good image.
You're not changing because you're already doing.
Right.
Right. You're doing it perfectly.
Right.
And that's alive.
Right.
Like a flowing water, or even that phrase that our Lord used about the spring that would be inside of that hudorzon, that living water that comes inside of you and springs up from the inside from the Holy Spirit.
Like the river doesn't change, but the flow is eternal, and there, so the flow connotes a type of change that isn't really change as much. Anyway,
yeah, it's alive.
Yeah, I don't want to squeeze.
I don't know. It's hard. Again, we're banging up. We don't have any words for those kinds of categories.
So, I was listening to this other podcast that you had turned me on to, with Ian McGilchrist, a neurologist and philosopher, and just fascinating. And I'm sure another time we could talk a little more about that work. I'm afraid to even reference it because I listened to these really smart people talk about neuroscience doesn't mean that I can even comprehend it, and it's in any real significant way. Although I do track what they're saying, but I'm even less certain of my ability to recall it. So I will be very cautious in general in what I recall. But if I remember correctly, as he was reflecting upon his own book, and he's getting to the topic of consciousness and the activity of the human brain and mind, he says time and time again, a bad analogy is a computer. The brain is not a computer. There are times in which you can use this analogy for certain functions of the mind, but the mind as a whole, it is a very, very bad and mistaken understanding of human consciousness and the mind as a whole. And he alludes to something, which I'm going to bring up, but didn't go much further into it. So I'm waiting for this to come back up. He said it is much more like flowing water. And I immediately connected it to this image of the Trinity. So he's talking about consciousness and his study, his neurological study of the human mind, and how it's leading to him an image of flowing water. And here you have Sister Lucia, who is having a vision through a particular grace, allowing her to, in a moment, to have some comprehension of the Holy Trinity, using an image of a cross of flowing water. I don't know if there's a connection or not, but I couldn't help but to wonder. And so from that, I started thinking more and more about it. And now as I approach the altar and celebrate Mass, what I've done is I kind of think of, as we make through the sacramental grace, we make the mystery of the Mass present in the moment, right? As instruments of the sacrament, the mystery of the Passion, Death, and Resurrection becomes contemporary to us. But I'm thinking of it as a continuous flow of water, if you will, of the cross, by which through this act, the sacred act of an ordained minister in the life of the church, opens a stream, and for that moment effectuates the elements, and has a unique grace for those present that kind of get caught up into its mist, if you will, and then will actually consume in the blessed, through the Blessed Sacrament itself, actually participate directly in that water of eternal life, and then we close it up, after the consecration. But it's an act. It's a new way for me to conceptualize what's going on, and I quite like it. I don't know if it's fraught with problems, but it seems to me to tie in very beautifully. If my human mind functions in a way that McGilchrist is alluding to, and there's an image of the Holy Trinity that involves a cross of flowing water, and I don't know, maybe so far what I'm seeing is that it's working really nicely. As I approach the altar, it is an image that is represented, of course, in sacred scriptures, the passion, death, and resurrection, so on and so forth. But there's something about this idea of opening a valve of this eternally flowing water of the cross of Christ that creates a mist in the atmosphere of the church where consecration is occurring, and then from which we are literally drawing from the font of everlasting life. So anyway, thoughts?
I guess the first thing that it came to my mind when you were speaking about its connection to the Blessed Trinity, to Ema Eucharist, etc., the way the mind works, etc., is because the mind it's really where we experience life, right? That we talk about life as kind of a principle of internal movement, a kind of principle by which things can move themselves, whether that is local motion or just interior motion about the kind of thoughts that we're having now. It's a higher kind of motion than just moving our bodies around. Hence, we feel more alive when we're engaged in it, because I'm discovering, I'm searching, I'm finding, it's the highest level of thing that I have, that I can do. What got me thinking, as you were saying, that is the classical psychological analogy, for the Blessed Trinity is inside of one person, you or me or anyone else listening to this, has both an intellect and a will in one person. So there's sort of three principles by which I'm generating an idea, and I'm loving the idea that I generate, which is a basic, very basic, we can talk about this in the time, but a very basic image, if you will, of the Blessed Trinity. For the Father generates the Son, and the Son is generated by the Father. It's what makes him distinct from the Father, even though there's one nature. And the Holy Spirit, who is neither the Father nor the Son, right? But as it were, God-breathed. And this whole reality spoken of in the Greek Fathers as a kind of perikoresis, which is a difficult word to translate. One translator I like that did it as a kind of an internal dance. There's a kind of interpenetration, a consistent and constant interpenetration of the persons, that they're never, again, going back that they're not static. When you think about it, even in terms of local motion, when you see a helicopter or a prop plane or something, and the blade spins fast enough, it seems like a solid mass. And to some degree it is, because it's so fast you couldn't get your hand through or light through, even if it's super fast, right? It becomes as if it were solid. So imagine, again, as a bad material analogy, God acting in himself, in these persons, interpenetrating the other persons like a kind of flow, but that is so absolute that it would appear to us as simple immutability that we understand as the rock not moving, the building still being there, the ground still being under your feet. But it's absolute activity. It's absolute act, sheer act. And an act that is
stable motion.
But it's penetrating the persons, they penetrate each other in a kind of, for lack of a better term, flow. And it's the way in which Dante kind of describes, with his own faltering words, he's much better wordsmith than we are, but attempting to describe these interpenetrating fires. And everyone's trying to use some kind of language to talk about life, activity, flow, water, whatever, even though it's not changing, it is absolute act. And that's a kind of life we can't possibly comprehend. And yet it's the very life that we're being invited into. It's what we were made for. On a more mundane level, do you have anything?
Usually my life is filled with mundane things.
Well, I know you're the administrator par excellence.
My final thought before we head off is that as soon as we hit September 1st, my mind shifted toward autumn food. Now, the climate didn't shift because it was still hot down here. Right?
It's true, though.
But it gave me license.
Yes.
I mean, I'm about 4 weeks away from Christmas music, but
you're that far.
well, maybe. But the autumn sense already.
Oh, I made a bolognese the other day.
Did you?
Just because it's
was
a
autumn.
slow cook. It's inside. You want your house to start smelling like food again.
I made a
Like-
soup,
Yeah, that's it. That's
a hearty pork
We've
sausage
switched.
soup.
We have switched.
Yeah, no, it's time.
It's time.
So I think we have to kind of look at the seasonal foods that are available.
Mm-hmm.
And for those who enjoy good food the way we do not underestimate the vegetables out there. You know, it's so often the case that everyone just looks at the proteins, and looks at the dairies, but the vegetables, I mean, what you can do with vegetables and the types of vegetables, I mean, it's extraordinary. The flavors that you can bring together, I mean, come on. I mean, just a medley of roasted vegetables that you put together with some rosemary and garlic and
Oh, it's
olive oil
true.
and salt
Isn't it
and
wonderful?
pepper. I mean,
I'm
those
getting really hungry.
I mean, those are fantastic.
We got to go.
We got to go cook.
God bless you all.
All right, bye now.
Bye-bye.
Makes me wanna scream from the rooftop to the street.
Thanks for listening to this episode of From the Rooftop.
For updates about new episodes, special guests, and exclusive deals for From the Rooftop listeners, sign up at rooftoppodcast.com.
And remember, for more great ways to deepen your faith, check out all the spiritual resources available at tanbooks.com.
And we'll see you again next time.
From the Rooftop.